It's the tip of the spear in the epic battle to defend the United States of America. The National Security Hour exposes the wolves in sheep's clothing and their nefarious plots to undermine and destroy U.S. national security.
Welcome, everyone. This is Colonel Rhett John, and welcome to the National Security Hour for America Out Loud News Network. And I have just an absolutely incredible guest today. And I first met her and got to know her at an event up in Pittsburgh in January. Had put on a American Eagles event, and my special guest is Ambassador Carla Sands, and I thought, I need to get her on the show here. So, Ambassador, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my honor and pleasure, Colonel, to join you on your show and talk about national security.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, I was so impressed with you up there. And you have quite an accomplished background, and including ambassador. And you got so many great things ahead of you. Please, I like everybody to introduce themselves, and even for people I know or I think I know really well, in the introduction, they always say something that is, I did not know about them. That's for people who I've considered good friends that I've known for years. So please do kind of a long introduction of yourself.
Well, Colonel, thank you. I'm from Central Pennsylvania, and I grew up in a big, loving family, and I had a dream, actually, a goal as a high school girl to be a U.S. ambassador. But because I'm from a small town near our capital in Pennsylvania, I didn't know about the Foreign Service. But I always knew that I wanted to be an ambassador. In fact, I went home from school and told my little sister, who's 5 years younger, when I grew up, I want to be an ambassador. And so I think that was like a North Star that people can have, when they conceive of something in high school or college or even younger. These dreams or goals are, I think, divinely inspired and kind of align us with our higher purpose. And so I was blessed and fortunate to be named by Donald Trump when he was president in his first term to represent the United States in the Kingdom of Denmark, and that's Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. But I had been running our family business. It was a commercial real estate business, and I'm a mom. My husband passed away in 2015. And, I had been very, very active in Republican politics for decades. But I had seen that a lot of the people that I worked to help get elect, they weren't really working for the people. They were working because they liked their pensions and their cocktail parties in Washington, D.C. and on that circuit. And I really feared that we were losing our country to I'll just call them radical left Democrats, who no longer love our country, who don't share our values anymore, who don't support our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel. And that is a shift that I never thought I'd see in America. But I remember maybe 10 years ago, maybe even less, the Democrat platform was being explained from the podium, and the people in the audience, the party members, booed when they talked about Israel, and they talked about, sort of key values that we as Americans had shared over the decades.
Wow. So you just went from a little girl in Pennsylvania wanting to be an ambassador to there. That's quite that's not many people say I want to be an ambassador when they're kids. That quite remarkable.
Well, I had some detours. I did a little acting. I was a young doctor of chiropractic and practiced with my dad, and in New York City and in Beverly Hills, California. And across the state, really, as a locum tenens. So I had done a lot of different things. But yeah, I found that as ambassador, they told us this when we went through ambassador school. They said, you're going to use every skill and knowledge set that you have ever gained in life. You're going to need it as ambassador. And it's true, because I ran for the Senate in Pennsylvania last cycle, and being an ambassador for President Trump in a Western European country is harder than being a candidate in a statewide race, just because it's very, very challenging. We'll leave it at that, even with our great allies.
Wow, wow, wow. Now, you said something there. You went to ambassador school. Now, is that what is ambassador school? Is that part of the Foreign Service Institute, or what
It
is?
is. It is
Okay.
run by the Foreign Service Institute, short FSI. It's run so well. And we had former ambassadors come, both Republican politicals, Democrat politicals, and then non-political career ambassadors come and brief us, as well as every department head or assistant head came and briefed us, all of the different security agencies and branches from the Pentagon came and briefed us. And then we had country specific briefings in various areas. So we were, I think, exceptionally well prepared to go off to post. Now, there's no preparation like the first day, right? I mean, that's like you're in the water and you've never done this before. But even the non-careers had never done this before. So even it's challenging for anyone to go and run an embassy where you haven't done the hiring mostly. You may have hired your assistant or your deputy, but everybody else is, they're not yours. It's not like you're running a private company, which I had done. And instead, you had to create a coalition and get
Okay.
people engaged and committed to your mission, and then get them to help fulfill your mission and make it their mission. So how do you do that? How do you achieve wins for the people of the United States, and do it so that our country becomes wealthier, more secure, and we build those ties that we need to succeed?
Wow, wow. No, you said it was a great course. Um, and I've been an ambassador or been on ambassadorial staff, but I've done a lot of international work and had to meet with a lot of ambassadors. Geez, I'll tell you one of the first stories. Last fall, I was invited down to Panama to kind of, by Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel, and personally, I wanted to kind of check out the Chinese influence down there in the upcoming election, which went the populist way. Somebody from the embassy reached out to us, and from Ambassador Ponte, and they wanted to talk to us. And our response, my response was, well, we can talk, but everything's going to be on the record, out in the open. I think bottom line, I think the person was sent to silence us. I was very disappointed by this whole encounter. So what's going on? Do you think at the Foreign Service Institute, do they teach America First values at the Foreign Service Institute?
Well, I did not see that, but I was just down in Panama I would say about a year ago, talking to parliamentarians from the region. So the Caribbean, Central America, South America, at the Parlentina, which is sort of their Southern Hemisphere UN, if you will, or Parliament. I thought I did see, the dining room there was the Chinese dining room. So
Excellent.
the PRC had funded the construction of the dining room at the Parliament for the Caribbean and South and Central America. So yes, there is corruption and there is heavy Chinese influence. And the number one trading partner for many, maybe a majority of those countries, is not the US or a neighbor country, it is China. So when we are not succeeding in our own hemisphere with trade, with security cooperation, when that is being wrested from us by China without us resisting, we've got a problem, for instance. And regarding putting America first, I think that is a good point. The Foreign Service Institute does a fantastic job preparing ambassadors with the government rules. There's a lot that non-career ambassadors don't know about these directives and laws that surround working for the government. They have acronym names, the FAM, the FA, and you have to follow the rules. And that is an important education. But I think that if there was one change, it probably would be, and not just at the Foreign Service Institute, but across the US government, the fact that we're all working for the American people and the American taxpayers, not for foreign governments or the women of some oppressed country, name one oppressed country, because that's not our mission. Our mission is actually to benefit the American people, full stop. And so if it doesn't fall into that bucket, I don't believe, this is my personal opinion now, I'm not speaking for President Trump, the Trump campaign, or America First Policy Institute. I think every action, personally, should benefit the American people.
Yeah, here, absolutely. Fascinating, fascinating. Yeah, I had a number of encounters. I'm not going to say which countries are in. There was one very, very important strategic partner that I would travel to regularly, and they had an acting ambassador for a moment. Oh yeah, and I want to ask you about that, charge d'affaires versus ambassador. But they had an acting. I guess they would have been a charge d'affaires until, well, this is during the Obama years. But they said things I felt like throttling this person. This is what I always learned in the special operations community and government service, working very sensitive matters with foreign partners. They love authenticity and transparency, and they can see right through non-authenticity and non-transparency. And this one country, the person was very, very, both in the prep meetings and in the actual meetings with the partner nation. There's a difference between self-deprecating humor and bashing the United States, and they definitely bashing the United States. It blew my mind. I mean, where does this come from? But I saw that in a number of times. I just blew my mind.
Well, John, I think that I have a couple of thoughts to that. First of all, some career people and some political appointees have their own agenda, and they're going to do what they're going to do unless they're stopped. But I also, in Western Europe, I'm not so sure that the counterparts in the Western European countries don't like it when American ambassadors or chargés suck up to them and don't require anything of them. I liken it to our relationship with some of these countries, which are rich. It's not post-World War II anymore, that we're not helping them survive. They're rich, and they can afford to do things like pay for their own defense. They choose not to, and we allow it. It's kind of like keeping a grown child on an allowance and not requiring them to pull their weight and grow up. And instead, we continue to just take care of them as if they are our child when they're not. Our people, the people of America, are the ones who should be supported and helped by our tax dollars and our government. But instead, it seems like we want to take care of everybody but at home. Wow, I mean, you and I are in airports all the time, and they're pretty crummy in the US. Not all the roads are looking so good. We've got bridges that fall down even when presidents visit them. So, there's infrastructure needs in our country as our country matures, and those investments, I mean, all that money shoveled out by this Congress with this leftist Democrat President Biden and Vice President Harris, and we can see not a lot of good. There's some things happening on the highways and things, but I'll just throw out an example. $8 billion have been appropriated to build electric car chargers. Now, notwithstanding that government has never built a gas station on private property for citizens to buy gas, but they're literally, they've spent about $8 billion. And I think they have They have around 7 or 8 car chargers have actually been built, and I'm not sure they all work. And so you can see that government is just so wasteful. It misappropriates capital, it squeezes out private investment. And so when you give government more and a bigger mandate, good things don't come of it. Instead, what happened under President Trump when he did his historic Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it set our country's economy on a wonderful path to success. It unleashed the animal spirits when he reduced regulations. By the end of the administration, I think 8 regulations were removed for every new regulation. He had promised 2 regulations would go away for every new one, but he actually achieved 8 regulations removed for every new regulation. And that just benefited the mom and pop shops, especially. They don't have armies of lawyers like these big corporations do to keep up with the tsunami of regulations that the Biden-Harris administration have just piled on their heads.
Yeah, I remember that exercise. I was in government. I retired and left in January of 2018, but I remember that exercise and the target list I drew up in my area. I was in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and this is what the Dems and do-gooder socialists don't understand is the drag coefficient of regulation. They say, you want to cut taxes and these regulations help people. No, they don't. They deter, they inhibit. And I remember drawing up that target list. So many things that really make things go slower, cost more, inefficient. Wow. We got a couple of minutes left. I wanted to go down. At the beginning of the next one, I want to ask you about negotiating skills, because you said something there that I thought a few minutes ago that I thought was very important. And I'll share a story I just learned from a career FSO. But in the time remaining, what was the number one issue with Denmark? Was there a number one issue with Denmark to work?
Yeah, there was. So, well, I'm going to split it into 2. I'm sorry. First of all, when I went through ambassador school, they asked us to write down our goals. And I wrote down, I want to open a consulate in Greenland. We hadn't had a diplomatic relationship in Greenland for 67 years when I got there. We had our most northern base in the world up in northern Greenland called Thule Air Base, which now is named by an Inuit named Pitifik Space Base, because President Trump created Space Force, and it's part of Space Force. And so it's an early warning radar system, protects us against North Korean missiles. And so that was my number one goal. So there's one. But the other was Denmark is rich, super rich, isn't paying its fair share to NATO. And it's not just about paying money, which they're not paying as much as they should. And they say they will. They said they would by 2024. We're here, they're not. And they're saying, well, we're going to buy, I don't know, X now, 2030, 2032, whatever it is. But the fact is, it's not just money. They're not recruiting and training enough young soldiers. Their soldiers, when I visited the forces in the NATO forces, and I think it was Poland, I met Welsh soldiers and I met Danish soldiers. The Danish soldiers could have been the parents, the fathers of these Welsh soldiers. They were so old. They were maybe 10 years younger than me. That's how old they were. So beyond the fighting age for men, more close to leadership or retirement age. And so they're not training, they're not buying enough equipment, and then nobody's maintaining their equipment. I mean, Germany, most of the tanks when I was there, they weren't even operable. They all had to be refurbished. So there's a lot of lack of initiative in the European countries, and they're big talkers, and I know they can do more, and they should do more.
Okay, great. Oh, thank you so much. Hey, we're going to be right back. Just a wonderful session here with Ambassador Carla Sands. This is Corette John on the National Security Hour.
I'm Dr. James Bragman. Do you suffer from allergies, sinus problems, or just seem to be getting sick more often? You're not alone. Many of my patients are finding relief with Cofix RX nasal spray. I've relied on the sanitizing power of povidone iodine for years. Cofix RX has harnessed that power to help cleanse germs, allergens, and viruses in your nasal cavity. You brush your teeth and wash your hands daily. Stay healthy by using Cofix RX to wash and cleanse your nose daily. Get Cofix RX today. Go to America Out Loud Shop and click on the Cofix RX banner, or type in cofixrx.com/outloud. Buy now and receive a 20% discount with a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Don't accept joint aches and stiffness as part of aging. Doctors at Advanced Nutrition Company, Healthy Cell, created Joint Health and Mobility to support connective tissue, joint lubrication, and reduce joint irritation with curcumin, omega-3, chondroitin, glucosamine, and hyaluronic acid for joint comfort and flexibility. And Healthy Cell's not a pill, it's a gel you swallow. Get 100% drug-free joint support. Go to healthycell.com and use code OUTLOUD for 25% off your first order. That's healthycell.com. Code out loud.
Is your gut a mess? 2/3 of Americans suffer because of gastrointestinal issues, and I was one of them. That is why we created a 3-step, doctor-formulated, completely natural gut reboot system that you can do at home in just minutes a day. Go to chemicalfreebody.com/outloud today. Get the Malcolm Healthy Gut Bundle. Reboot your gut and your energy and save 20% on your first order.
We are back. This is Colonel Rhett John on the National Security Hour. Got an absolutely incredible session. Ambassador Carla Sands, during the Trump years, ambassador to Denmark, just quite accomplished. Ambassador, I mean, just a great conversation here. One of the things that you mentioned, defense spend right at the tail of the last segment here, and I think Denmark is right at 2% now, but for most of the last 20 years, that metric was in effect. They have not been at 2%. Horrible. What do you, Senator Wicker said 5% is the new 2%. What do you think about that? And should we be holding our partners' feet to the fire?
I agree with him, but I think that we should do it incrementally. I don't think you want to more than double it overnight. So maybe go to 3% with a target of 4 and then 5. And they're going to say, oh, we couldn't spend the money if we had it, but they can. They just have to be able to absorb it, absorb the responsibility and then perform. But for instance, a lot of our NATO allies are not producing what NATO's asked them to do. If you're going to be a member of a club, you have to pay in your dues and you have to do whatever is required. And there's a report card that comes out on every country from NATO. And until a couple of years ago, Denmark would actually publish it online, what their report card was. And it said, that NATO expected a medium heavy brigade, but they weren't going to, in any case, be ready to deliver that. So the requirements that NATO puts on these countries, they're not necessarily fulfilling them. We need actual honest partners that can defend their own territory. That's Article 3 of NATO, is that you have to defend your own territory before Article 5. You come to the defense of your allies. Look at the defense of the UK. They could not prosecute that war in the Falklands today. They don't have the Navy for it. Look at our Navy forces, what we had after World War I or World War II, and then look at us today. I think we're down to maybe 300 ships from thousands. So do we have credible deterrence against rapidly modernizing China? The PRC is rapidly modernizing and building up their military, and they're spending a lot more than they're disclosing. Remember, there's a lot. So if in the US we classify information, in China, they put out a fake number and then they've got the real number in the background. So you don't believe anything that comes out of China, whether it's economic numbers or military spending numbers. But they're innovative, as is Russia. Russia's learning a lot in this Ukraine war. And I fear that our Pentagon is this is me personally talking, not for President Trump or his campaign or AFPI, but I believe that our Pentagon is so 1950s centered, like old style, and not nimble, as we must be in a world that is rapidly modernizing with AI. And I know that our military is great. It's the greatest military in the world, but we must adapt to the times. And I don't think that we're adapting quickly enough.
Wow, wow, right on, as Limbaugh used to say, right on. Very good. I got so many things. You're just fantastic. I was speaking with a career Foreign Service officer about 2 weeks ago, and they said something that I said, hold it, stop. What did you just say? Because I said, I didn't know this in my entire 40-year career in uniform and as a civilian for the government. He said, FSOs never receive any formal training in negotiating skills. And it ties in with something you said at the beginning. And I go, that blew me away. I said, in special operations, as a senior civilian, I went through a number of formal courses and training on how to conduct a negotiation. And most people say, well, hey, I had a college degree, I've bought a car, I bought a house, I know what to do in negotiation. Come on. I mean, this is insulting. I have to go through a negotiation. And I go, wow. That blew me away. I said, so you have FSOs, Foreign Service officers, who are responsible for life and death decisions, negotiating the American position, who have, according to this FSO, zero training in negotiations. And I go, wow, that is something we need to change. No wonder we give away the farm and we haven't even gotten to the table yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, our FSOs are wonderful people. They are trained in a more professorial manner, and they understand the issues, certainly, and I respect them greatly, but most of them don't come out of the private sector. Some do. It's a second career for some, but for most, it's a life career working in the Foreign Service for the State Department. And if you haven't been in private business and really hung by your fingernails from the windowsill, you don't really understand how to really negotiate. And I'll just give you like the most mundane example. At my residence, we had a front drive and we had a back drive. And the back drive had an easement for more than 100 years. Before the Nazis had that residence, that was an easement to the back gate of that house. And that's how they load in supplies, how they load in for big parties.
You're talking about your ambassadorial residence in
Yes,
Denmark, not in Pennsylvania. Oh,
that's right, the ambassadorial residence in Denmark. Well, one of the team, before I got there, got into it with the neighbor, and the neighbor sued to stop the residents, the ambassador, to have this absolutely needed, because in emergencies, this is how a vehicle would get there, rear entrance. And so the team was like, well, we're going to have to, tell him we're only going to use it XYZ. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a historical easement I went into the documents for that the commune, the local authorities had given to this residence before it was owned by the US government. And I was like, absolutely not. This is a historical easement. We're not giving an inch, not a centimeter. This is a personal dispute, and we need to apologize to the neighbor for the irritation that he's been caused by a rogue employee. And we need to make this right. Well, the lawyers get engaged. This is, a European issue and blah, blah, blah. And do you want to give never an inch? We never, just like Mike Pompeo's book, we never gave an inch because we were right. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand looking at the law and precedent and standing your ground, you can lose everywhere. And so I was happy to help a little bit there, but I think that the tendency is to just kind of head scratch and not know what to do, and not understand that that there's no reason to give in unless there's a good reason. And then you better have that reason, why you would capitulate on something where you stand with authority and in the right.
Wow. Very, very good. I went into a lot of complex discussions with our foreign partners, and I'll just leave it at this. I usually knew in advance, pretty clear detail, their thoughts and opinions and feelings on what we were talking about. And afterwards, I kind of knew in great detail their thoughts and opinions about the whole proceedings. Uh, and I also gone through a number of trainings on how to establish negotiating positions and different courses of action. What is the agenda? What is the desired outcome? And it just blows me away because I've seen so many FSOs and careerists that I just get circles run around them. And the other side knows that if they just cross their arms and look uninterested, the Americans will cave and fold in a heartbeat. They'll fold like a lawn chair, nothing flat. Just unbelievable.
It's true. So a good example, it was a thorny issue when I got to post. In fact, they told me maybe 80% of my time would be taken up by 20% of the issues like Greenland. Well, my predecessor, who was very popular in Denmark, had done allowed a deal to happen that disenfranchised, I'll just say, the Greenlanders, cost them millions in income when a new company got a maintenance contract up there in that northern Thule Air Base, now Pituffik. And the Greenlanders were so angry about this, they stopped all meetings with Americans, all the tracks of, cooperation meetings. They ceased talking to us, basically. They were so angry. And so it was a thorn in the side of the US-Denmark relationship too, because Greenland's part of Denmark, part of the kingdom. And Denmark controls the security and the foreign policy of Greenland as part of their semi-autonomous status as Greenlanders. And so I would go and sit down at the Pentagon, like, I don't know, every 6 weeks or 8 weeks and ask, could we renegotiate this Thule Air Base agreement, the maintenance agreement, and get to a good place? Even the Greenlandic premier wouldn't meet with me for more than the first year I was there. They were so upset. We would meet on the sidelines, but no formal engagement. He couldn't because the people were so upset. In fact, they were so upset that the Greenlandic pilots, when I would fly up there, would speak to me through clenched teeth about how they better not lose the airlift contract and the sea lift contract, as they had lost that maintenance contract. The Greenlanders were very, very angry. And we don't want that because China had made inroads there. They had rolled out the red carpet and tried to pull Greenland into their Belt and Road initiative, flown over the premier and his government, the C-suite meetings. What can we do for you? They wanted to finance and build with the state-owned enterprise the airports up in Greenland. And to date, it had been that the U.S. military, when we occupied Greenland during World War II, had built all the airports and all the ports. China, the PRC, tried to buy one of our old deep water ports that we had given to Greenland after we left Greenland. But how we got that done was really challenging, to get that base contract renegotiated, because our Pentagon was happy with it. And I understood they were saving American taxpayers' dollars. And that's important. But you also have to have a foreign policy strategy. You have to be able to have a relationship. And when you take money from people without a good return for the American people, that's also not a win. And so we were able to renegotiate it with support from Greenland and Denmark and the US DoD, and reestablished a diplomatic relationship, and were able to put that consulate in Greenland while I was there. So my team worked so hard on those issues. They never stopped. I think they were happy to have a rest when I left, actually, because we were so engaged with this sort of security cooperation agreements. And we also got a trade and in other ways, cultural cooperation with Greenland and with the Faroe Islands, because they want trade with the US. And so we were able to deliver those highly desired outcomes to those folks.
Wow. Well, no, but and this is when I was still in government. One of the concerns was you mentioned China and I think it was Huawei that was trying to provision the IT for including the air base and at Thule, Pitifuk. Oh, I can't remember what was it. What was the new name? That
Pitifik?
Pitifik. Okay. And it was like, this is really a bad situation. We got to make sure this doesn't happen. So was Huawei out of there? They're not. They didn't provision.
So when I got to Denmark, the Danes, the government and the business weren't really aware of the challenge of the Chinese Communist Party and their intentions. They looked at it as a pure business play. They were welcoming Huawei. Huawei had the only lit sign in their King's Square, the big main square in the center of Copenhagen. And Huawei was lobbying to provide the 5G for the entire kingdom. So Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Denmark. And I began to talk about them like almost day one about China challenge, and please be aware, wake up, read these studies, read what they're doing. And we were successful. Denmark was the first country to come out and say, we're not going to use, now everybody's afraid of China and losing that trade. So they didn't say China, the foreign minister at that time was the first one in all of Europe to come out publicly and say, we're not going to use 5G equipment from a non-democratic country. And that's code for China. And then we also encouraged him, and he did lobby other EU heads, foreign ministers and heads of state to not use Chinese-made 5G, largely Huawei. There's other companies too, but that was the one it's one of the Chinese champions. Now they are building back up, but we did knock them down for a while, understanding that the reason not to use Chinese-made 5G is the 5G is not about you and I talking or people making a phone call to their friend. Largely, it's industrial processes. So it's how does your electric grid work? It's going to run it. It's going to run, the 5G is going to run the water systems of your nation or your state. It's running public transportation. Everything that's done electronically would be run on that backbone of the Chinese 5G. And so they could do anything they wanted. You don't behave the way they want or say the right thing, they're going to turn something off, your grid goes down, the water. And so those attacks could happen, and certainly would at will. And so because they put Keith Kroc, who was our E at the State Department and a phenomenal man who now has a tech diplomacy center at Purdue, used to say Huawei doesn't have a back door, to get in and manipulate. They have a front door. In other words, it's purpose built to meddle. And Africa is in great peril because of that Huawei incursion into Africa. All their comms, I'm sure it's a big challenge to keep any secret because of Huawei's incursion into Africa and how they've, bribed and manipulated into positions of control there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent years, we'll talk about that. I spent years part of the team pursuing Huawei, finally beat them down in the American market. Everyone, we'll be right back. This is Colonel Rhett John with Ambassador Carla Sands, just having a great dialogue.
When God, through his grace and mercy, gave us free will, the will of the people was to live freely. To that end, we fight for the liberty of all, at a time when global tyranny threatens us as never before in mankind's history. This vision is manifest at AmericaOutloud.news, a site for all who cherish free will and freedom. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. America Out Loud Talk Radio. Liberty and justice for all.
World-class care from doctors you can trust, all from the comfort of your home. That is One Wellness. Dr. Peter McCullough and his team at The Wellness Company launched the One Wellness membership to provide free monthly supplements and unlimited telemedicine access with doctors that share your values. The Wellness Company's Chief Medical Board designed every supplement and medical protocol with your health in mind. From groundbreaking supplements like the Spike Support Formula to unique care like Freedom from Big Pharma. Join a healthcare system that puts your health and well-being above the interest of Big Pharma's bottom line. It's the way healthcare should be, with a company that shares your values. Go to OutLoudCare.com today and use code OUTLOUD for 25% off your first month of One Wellness.
We're back. This is Colonel Rhett John with just incredible Ambassador Carla Sands, just having so many great topics that we're going through. And I was part of the Huawei team. We were talking about Huawei, and I was part of the team that since the when I first came into, pivoted from war on terror to cyber in 2007, that was one of the how do we pursue and nullify Huawei? And they just January of this year, they finally gave up on the American market, period. Not just the American government market, but just the American market. And good for us. Too bad for them, because they are a giant vacuum cleaner right through the front door. But
Colonel, I've got to say that when American consumers are buying something like a home camera, a computer, they need to look at where is it made and purposefully not buy Chinese made, because there is, like Keith Kroc says, not a back door, there's a front door.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my passions has been pursuing, this is not me as a government or person or former government person, is DJI. I call it the Flying Huawei. And I've been going back and forth with the Costco General Counsel on this topic and just trying to explain, look, this is absolutely ridiculous. And sooner or later, it's going to be significant liability to Costco, because to turn rotors, you have to authenticate your personal phone, which means now your personal phone and all its information is authenticated to the DJI servers in Guangzhou, right across the border in Shenzhou, right from Hong Kong, and willfully enabling the Chinese mass collection system. We just had a student here, I think went from felonies to misdemeanors, a Chinese student who in the spring here decided to fly a DJI drone over Newport News shipyard. And you tell me that wasn't a Chinese intel operation. You gotta be kidding me.
Well, General, we love our Chinese neighbors, but every Chinese national, even if they're in the US, are under the Chinese new security law that requires them to spy for the CCP and to report in. And if they're a tourist and come from China to the US, everyone is required to bring back information. So they are at war with us in every way. And the American people need to understand that. And I don't think they do.
Yeah. And this is related to that is we got Chinese spy bases in Cuba, bad thing. Not one, but 5. The Bahamas, and I've been invited down there. I'm going to take a little trip to the Bahamas to kind of see what's going on. Haiti's collapsed. Haiti was one of the few nations that recognizes Taiwan. Wonder why it re-collapsed there. But Bahamas is a situation. I got to ask you this situation. I've never seen a situation. There's a charge d'affaires in the Bahamas, which I think is a bad idea. They need an ambassador. I don't understand why for years it's been a charge d'affaires. Charge d'affaires is French for we don't care enough about the country to actually put an ambassador.
Well, if the ambassador is traveling, the deputy becomes a charge. So the deputy chief of mission, sort of like the assistant ambassador, also, they're not Senate confirmed, but they become the acting ambassador. So they're acting in place of the ambassador, and that's what charge d'affaires means. And they're necessary. If you go traveling, your charge steps in. If you go for a medical emergency, the charge is in charge. If you leave the country and leave your post, which many politicals do, they don't always stay the whole time, the charge becomes the acting ambassador. And so that's an important position that we need. But they also need to be held accountable by the administrations, no matter Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, I don't think we've actually had an ambassador in the Bahamas since I want to say the Bush years. It's just crazy.
I had friends that were ambassador during the Bush years, and they were so honored. Reagan and Bush had wonderful Republican ambassadors in the Bahamas.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Because I think it's been a huge dry spell. And I go, this is the message to the Bahamas. There's only 400,000 Bahamians. My county is larger than the Bahamas. And oh, here was another element. I've never seen this. The current charge d'affaires, and his name's escaping me, came from Diplomatic Security Service. And I said, I've never seen a charge come from DSS before. I thought that was really weird.
That is very weird. And I really wonder how something like that happened. Yeah, that's highly unusual. And I wouldn't think necessarily a good idea.
Yeah, there's been a lot of political violence there. In fact, the Conservative Party, which is a minority, their deputy was just now they said it was street crime. I've gone through the reports. I sure don't think it was street crime. I think it was a Chinese hit. Don Sanders was killed just outside of the capital in Nassau. Really suspicious, but. We have a sensitive U.S. facility there. It's public. Everybody can read about it. And guess who provisions the IT for the entire island? Starts with an H. Huawei. So bad idea. So we got about 10 minutes left here. I got a laundry list of other things. Where do we start? Kind of a little thing with Denmark. Was Denmark were they participating in the F-35 program?
They do. In fact, I took the Danes to Lockheed Martin to see the progress of their F-35s that they had purchased. They weren't buying as many as NATO asked them to buy, and they certainly weren't replacing their F-16s. They had a lot of F-16s. They bought a few F-35s. I would imagine NATO is going to ask them to purchase more. I also took them to Raytheon. When I went in there on their frigate and looked inside their missile silos, there were no missiles. And so I said to the head of their military, okay, these are great silos, but where are the missiles? They were like, oh, Madam Ambassador, we can't afford to buy the missiles. I was like, really? Rich Denmark, no missiles in the silos. What's going to happen if you're attacked? So we talked about it a lot in the news. And so they did buy missiles for their silos, but they are great partners. I mean, these are things they need, to be pressed by their security partner to do more. We all took that peace dividend and spent less on our defense. We're still crawling out of a hole, I think, from the peace dividend when the wall fell and the Soviet Union fell. And we put more money into social programs and things like that. But we have to be safe before we can put money into social programs. We have to be secure. But Denmark was a great partner on blocking the Nord Stream 2, that Russian gas pipeline. Mm-hmm. The only place it was never completed was in first Danish waters and then their EEZ. And then we had the threat of sanctions, which I worked with our ambassador or charge in Germany to work on sanctions on the providers to the people that were fulfilling that contract on Nord Stream 2, the Russian gas pipeline. And we know the story. What happened is Joe Biden was elected president, and within a few months, the first day he killed Keystone XL pipeline, and then within several months, he said, I'm not going to sanction that Russian gas pipeline, Nord Stream 2. And I think that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that Putin needed to get the green light to go into Ukraine. I think the second one was when he saw the Afghanistan withdrawal and went, these people don't know what they're doing. And then the third, when Joe Biden, and I think Kamala was standing there, I can't remember, but Kamala Harris was part of it. He said from the podium, well, if there's a minor incursion into Ukraine by Russia, we're going to let it go. He literally said that. And so that was the third, I think, piece of the puzzle that Putin needed. I don't believe if Donald Trump had been in the White House that Putin would ever have invaded Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I do not believe that would have happened. I do not believe that the awful atrocities that happened when Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th of 2023. I don't think that would have happened if we had a strong leader in the White House. So leadership matters. And I hope that we will have stronger leadership in 2025.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We got about 7 minutes left here. So just in this time, first I want to talk about 3 quick questions and then let everybody know how to get in contact with you, your social media. But 3 recommendations. We have instruments of national power like DIME. Starts with D for a reason. That's diplomatic. Should always be the tip of the spear in asserting American interests. What for the new administration? What are kind of some of the 3 basic recommendations you would make for the D instrument or the diplomatic instrument?
Well, Colonel, the first thing is without a strong military and a strong leader in the White House, I think diplomacy is not as effective. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw when Anthony Blinken was up in Alaska early on in the Biden-Harris administration, the Chinese diplomats were chewing him out, using his own words to insult and denigrate the United States, our great country, the greatest country in the history of the world, the United States of America. So without a strong leader in the White House and a strong military, I think diplomacy is, I think it's actually ineffective.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the infamous thriller in Anchorage, he got absolutely pantsed, wedgied, and what every other possible. I mean, he was roughed up pretty bad. And it's like Blinken's like going, it's like, oh yeah, so what? Big no. I mean, I just blows my mind the Democrat worldview of dealing with international partners, and they don't assert an American position. They don't know how to play hardball. They only play hardball with our friends, not right. with malign nations. It's the opposite world. It's opposite world.
The perfect example is neither Biden nor Harris was at the plane steps when Netanyahu got off the plane just a few days ago. Our greatest ally in the Middle East, in a hot war right now that we're helping them with. You have to show support to the world. The whole world is aligned against Israel right now and has become largely anti-Semitic. And yet our Democrat Party is also joining that. That's a very dangerous time in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's scary. It's insulting. And we should, little things like that, not being there at the airport to meet Blinken. In fact, when Blinken left China the most recent time, the only person who was there at the airport on his departure was the U.S. ambassador. That in itself was a message and an insult.
An insult, right. It shows a lack of respect. That's right.
Yeah, and you gotta push back. It's very depressing about this. Any other recommendations for an incoming administration besides being strong and showing resolve?
Well, you brought it up, negotiating. You negotiate from a position of strength.
Yeah.
I also think that our foreign assistance, and President Trump has talked about this. If anybody's interested, he has 20 points that he has made as his platform. And there are things like rebuilding our military, bringing us back to energy independence and dominance. And you can't, in diplomacy, you have to speak with the commander-in-chief's platform at top of mind. In other words, we're not independent soldiers out there. We actually work for the commander-in-chief. And I think a lot of people in the U.S. government we've learned this, have forgotten that they work for the commander-in-chief and are supposed to follow his directives. David Bernhardt wrote a great book, You Report to Me, that your listeners can go and seek out. he worked at Interior under President Trump, but under other presidents in the past. And so he talks about that challenge of having these Lone Rangers out there subverting the work of that they're supposed to be doing.
Wow. Wow. Well, hey, Ambassador, this has been an absolutely awesome time. You're great. You've done great work for us. Hope to see you in the second term and third term of the Trump administration here. So my thesis is it's actually lawful to have a third term since there was a break in services. I've studied
Oh
the
my goodness.
constitutional. So
I can't speak to that, but can I talk about places that people can go to get more information?
absolutely, please.
Wonderful. So if it's okay, I'd like to just suggest they go to swampthevoteusa.com, swampthevoteusa.com, and sign up and commit to voting early, either in person or by mail, or voting on election day. And they can go to America First Policy Institute, America First Policy. And there we have 20 policy centers. We're working to bring back America First laws and regulations that benefit the American people and don't hurt them. And then I'm on Twitter, probably hottest on Twitter at Carla H. Sands, on Instagram and Facebook a little bit at Carla Sands. And I look forward to hearing people's comments. And I admire what you're doing. Thank you so much, Colonel John Mills.
All right, Ambassador. Thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you so much. Honor to have on the show. Love to have you back soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This has been Colonel Rhett John with just the fabulous Ambassador Carla Sands, and this has been the National Security Hour. We'll see you on the next episode.